Roman numerals are a numerical system that originated in ancient Rome and continued to be widely used across Europe until the late Middle Ages. This system represents numbers through specific combinations of letters from the Latin alphabet, each assigned a fixed numerical value. Different sequences of these symbols correspond to different numerical values. In their modern form, Roman numerals are constructed using 7 fundamental Latin letters: I, V, X, L, C, D, and M. These symbols, when arranged in accordance with established conventions, allow for the representation of a wide range of numbers. The use of Roman numerals persisted well beyond the fall of the Roman Empire. By the 11th century, however, Arabic numerals had been introduced to Europe from Al-Andalus, the Muslim-ruled area of the Iberian Peninsula, facilitated by Arab traders and mathematical treatises. The transition from Roman to Arabic numerals was gradual, and despite their eventual adoption due to greater efficiency, Roman numerals have remained remarkably resilient. Even today, they continue to be widely used in various contexts across the Western world. Roman numerals are commonly found on clock faces, with one of the most famous examples being the clock on the tower of the Palace of Westminster, widely known as Big Ben. Interestingly, many traditional clock faces that incorporate Roman numerals follow a long-standing convention of displaying this 4 instead of this 4 for the 4 o'clock position, while still using 9 for 9 o'clock. This practice dates back to some of the earliest mechanical clocks, such as the Wells Cathedral clock in England, which was constructed between 1386 and 1392. However, this convention is not universally observed. Notably, Big Ben follows a subtractive notation and displays this 4 rather than this 4 for the 4 o'clock position. Roman numerals continue to be prominently used in the regnal names of monarchs and popes such as King Charles of the United Kingdom and Pope Benedict. These numerical designations, known as regnal numbers, are typically read as ordinals, hence the 3 in King Charles is pronounced as the 3rd. The practice of using regnal numbers emerged sporadically in medieval Europe and became more systemically adopted in England during the reign of King Henry VIII. Prior to this, monarchs were often distinguished by epithets rather than numerical titles, for example, Edward the Confessor. Roman numerals employ distinct symbols for each power of 10, and unlike the Arabic numeral system, do not include a symbol for 0. In contrast, Arabic numerals rely on place value notation, where 0 serves as a crucial placeholder, allowing the same digit to represent different powers of 10. The absence of a standardized system for Roman numerals has historically led to variations in their use. While ancient Rome exhibited some degree of consistency, the notation became increasingly inconsistent and chaotic during the medieval period. Over time, various conventions emerged, leading to the establishment of modern guidelines for their usage. Despite these variations, one fundamental principle remains consistent. When a smaller numeral appears before a large one, it indicates subtraction, whereas when a smaller numeral follows a larger one, it signifies addition. Likewise, placing multiple larger numerals together denotes cumulative addition. Many of the widely accepted rules governing Roman numerals were actually formulated by Renaissance-era mathematicians more than 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. These scholars, enamored with the ideals of classical antiquity, sought to impose a structured and systemic approach to Roman numeral notation, often embellishing it to create what they perceived as a more perfect mathematical system. In more recent times, there has been a resurgence of interest in adhering to a largely classical notation, while some modern writers continue to favour more flexible variations of the system. But how high can Roman numerals actually go? Is there a limit to the number of symbols that can be used to represent increasingly larger values? Fortunately, numerous records from ancient Rome document financial and economic transactions involving vast sums, often ranging into the millions of sestertii. These records include tax revenues, military salaries, shipments of grain from Egypt, and tariffs collected from trade, among other financial accounts. As in modern times, the highest commonly used numerical value in ancient Rome was 1 million or 1,000,000. The term million originates from the early Italian millionaire, derived from mille, meaning thousand, combined with the augmentative suffix onere. Today, the concept of a million remains widely used to quantify significant figures, whether referring to money, populations, distances, or any large numerical value in everyday language. It has come to symbolize an exceptionally large quantity of something. In Roman numerals, large numbers were expressed using words rather than dedicated symbols. For example, mille represented 1,000, decimilia signified 10,000, centumilia denoted 100,000, and deces centena or deces centena millia was used for 1 million. Since the Roman numeral system did not extend to such large values with distinct symbols, there was no dedicated notation for 1 million. However, in modern modern usage, the abbreviation MM is commonly employed to represent 1 million in financial and numerical contexts. Technically, Roman numerals have no definitive upper limit, as any number can theoretically be constructed through combinations of existing symbols. That said, the largest standard numeral within the system is M, representing 1000. Interestingly, this symbol was not widely adopted until around 1300 AD, long after the classical Roman era. The Roman numeral system operates on an additive principle, meaning that if M represents 1000, then MM signifies 2000. Since Roman numerals are formed by stringing symbols together, in theory, any number could be expressed by simply repeating a given numeral enough times. For instance, writing M 5,000 times would theoretically represent 5 million. However, this approach quickly becomes impractical due to the excessive length of notation, making it cumbersome for everyday use. As a result, Roman numerals typically follow a convention that limits the repetition of any single symbol to a maximum of 3 or in rare cases 4 times. Consequently, within standard notation, the highest number traditionally represented in Roman numerals is 3999, written as MMM CM XIX. However, by deviating from traditional Roman numeral conventions, it is possible to represent much larger values. Both the ancient Romans and medieval scribes developed various non-standard extensions to accommodate exceptionally large numbers. Among these adaptations, two particularly notable methods emerged. In Roman numerals, the apostrophus is a distinctive symbol resembling a backward letter C, historically used to represent large numbers. Under the apostrophus notation system, 500 was written as IC, while 1000 was denoted as CIC. This method, which involved enclosing numbers within C and C to signify multiplication by 1000, originated from Etruscan numeral traditions. Each additional set of C and C around CIC increased their value exponentially. For example, CCICC represented 10,000, while CCCICCC signified 100,000. Alongside this, extending the sequence of C to the right of IC multiplied its value by 10, with ICC representing 5,000 and ICCC denoting 50,000. Although the Romans rarely wrote numbers exceeding 100,000, in theory this system could be extended indefinitely, for instance to a hypothetical 10 million. In some cases, the apostrophus notation was further simplified into abbreviated symbols. For instance, CIC was condensed to this, while ICC became this, and CCICC was represented as this. It is likely that IC evolved into the more commonly recognised D, while CIC may have influenced the development of the later Roman numeral M. These adaptations reflect the gradual refinement of Roman numeral notation over time. To represent larger numbers, the Romans employed a notation known as the vinculum, a horizontal line placed above a numeral to indicate multiplication by 1000. For example, the numeral M or 1000 could be transformed into 1 million by simply adding a vinculum, effectively increasing its value by a factor of 1000. Likewise, multiple instances of M with a continuous vinculum denoted successive multiplications by 1000. To express even larger values, an additional vinculum could be added. For instance, to represent 1 billion, the notation would evolve applying a second vinculum, signifying that 1 million is multiplied by another factor of 1000. The vinculum emerged during the late Roman Republic and became a widely used alternative to the apostrophic 1000 throughout the imperial era. This notation was commonly employed across the Roman world to indicate multiplication by 1000. Its usage persisted into the Middle Ages, where it became more commonly known as a titulus, meaning label or inscription. Even today, it appears in modern editions of classical and medieval Latin texts. But does this mark the upper limit of Roman numeral notation? Not quite. Another system known as the box vinculum was developed to represent even larger numbers. This method involves enclosing a numeral within a three-sided box which signified multiplication by 100,000. For example, placing 13 inside a box would result in 1,300,000. Thus, if M or 1000 were enclosed within a box, it would transform into a single symbol representing 100 million. As previously mentioned, there was never an official or universally accepted standard for Roman numerals. Their usage varied significantly in ancient Rome and became increasingly inconsistent during the medieval period. Contrary to modern assumptions, the Romans did not adhere strictly to rigid mathematical conventions. For instance, while some inscriptions represented the number 4 as this, others used this. This inconsistency extended to larger numbers as well, as one of the gates of the Colosseum is inscribed with this symbol representing 44. Additionally, the Romans frequently employed shorthand in writing, a system known as Tironian notes. Developed in the 1st century BCE, this system consisted of thousands of symbols used for rapid notation. It was named after Marcus Tullius Tiro, the personal secretary of statesman Marcus Tullius Cicero, who is widely credited with its invention. convention. Tiro's shorthand system originally comprised approximately 4,000 symbols, later expanded to 5,000 by subsequent scholars. During the medieval period, this notation was further developed in European monasteries, eventually growing to include around 13,000 distinct signs. However, due to the vast number of symbols, many remain difficult to decipher today. It is likely that similar shorthand techniques were used for numerical notation, which may explain the presence of irregular or seemingly nonsensical numeral inscriptions in historical records. Ultimately, the Roman numeral system was never expanded beyond a certain threshold because neither the Romans nor medieval scribes had a practical need to express numbers on the scale of a million, billion, or a trillion, values that are commonplace in modern numerical systems. Had there been a necessity to denote such vast quantities, they may have developed additional notation by combining symbols like the apostrophus and box vinculum with the vinculum to extend their system further. But what is the largest number recorded in an ancient Roman text? The highest numerical value mentioned in Roman writings is 50 million. This figure appears in reference to the immense wealth of Roman general Marcus Licinius Crassus, often regarded as the richest man in Rome. Crassus amassed his fortune through a combination of the trafficking of enslaved individuals, profits from silver mining, and strategic real estate speculation. He showed marked respect to Livia Augusta, to whose favour he owed great influence during her lifetime and by whose last will he almost became a rich man. For he had the largest bequest among her legatees, one of 50 million sesterces. But because the sum was designated in figures and not written out in words, Tiberius, who was her heir, reduced the bequest to 500,000 and Galba never received even that amount. By combining established Roman numeral conventions, it is possible to construct numbers as large as 399,999,999 using standard notation. This can be represented as, without resorting to the entirely non-standard approach of repeatedly stacking M's or inventing new symbols. However, at this scale, the inherent limitations of the Roman numeral system become evident. Beyond this point, representing larger numbers requires either the repetition of 4 or more identical symbols in succession, something rarely seen in historical inscriptions, or the use of combinations and modifications that were never formally adopted in antiquity. This has been me, Jack, and if you're a Roman, please leave all your comments in Roman numerals down below.